What you're seeing right now is gameplay of my latest Geometry Dash level titled The World Machine, a reference to the game One Shot. Even if you were to look very carefully at the design of the level, it's almost impossible to tell that anything is suspicious right from attempt 1. However, things get a little more interesting the second time around. This time, most of the gameplay has been completely altered and you're presented with an entirely different level. I'd like to imagine that you saw the title of this video, so it probably goes without mentioning that this level is completely randomized. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly how the level generates, the secret mechanisms running in the background, and most importantly, how I randomized the Geometry Dash level before the release of the random trigger. Let's start with a little run through of the level. I'm going to put 4 different attempts on screen in order to show just how heavily randomized the level actually is. The level begins with this green ship part, which never changes. Notice that it requires some precise flying to pass. If you haven't already caught on to why it's there, it'll be explained later on. Once the ship part is over, the randomization begins. Just like the majority of my levels, this level is built in the Update 1.0 style, right down to the mechanics. This is because it's much quicker and because I've kind of accepted the fact that if I were to try to decorate the level, I'd probably only get hate comments. Edgy, but true. Anyways, right now you're probably noticing that some of the clips have the exact same gameplay for certain parts. This is because the level is split up into chunks that are each about 20 to 30 grid spaces long. Each chunk has 4 entirely different variants, one of which will appear in the playthrough. The chunks have a very similar beginning and ending and always appear at the same point in the level in order to smoothly transition from one chunk to another without worrying about the level being impossible. There's a total of 32 chunks, and if you do the math, that's 128 short layouts, only a quarter of which appear in your attempt. Additionally, there are 8 effect chunks for things like the background color and if the player trail is enabled. The level ends by showing you which chunks were generated during your attempt and which effects you had on. The chunks in light blue were made by my friend SD Slayer and the ones in dark blue by Rado. I'd like to give a huge thanks to these 2 people for helping me speed up the creation of the level, especially the ship gameplay. You can find links to their channels in the description below, so go show them some love. Now that I've explained how the level's generated, it's time to talk about randomization. As some of you might know, Update 2.2 is going to introduce the random trigger, which is exactly what is needed for this level. However, at the time of uploading this, 2.2 has not been officially released yet, nor do we know if it ever will be. So let's do the next best thing and make our own random. If you're a fan of Civ gaming like I am, you'll be interested in knowing that the randomizer I made works almost identically to how Mario Maker 2 handles its randomization.
If we build a small area that leads up to the randomizers and have Mario travel towards it, then the randomizers will always yield the same results. But if we travel on top of this conveyor belt again, but this time randomly look upwards a couple of times, then Mario reaches this destination at the same moment as before. But this time, the randomizers actually produce a different outcome.
So here's how it works in our situation. Throughout the whole level, there's a number, or seed, that's counting upwards from 0 to 3 and looping back to 0 when 3 is reached. This means that depending on your X position in the level, the seed will be rather 0, 1, 2, or 3. For many cases, that's all that's needed for a randomizer. For example, in my Impossible Quiz level, it works perfectly since your X position will always be drastically different when you reach a certain question. However, this is a completely linear level, so unfortunately our seed will always be the same every time we pass a certain point since we'll always have the same X position. So let's make the randomizer even better. In August 2018, I posted a small randomizer tutorial almost identical to what I explained, except this time, the seed increases by 1 every time you click. However, there's still a slight problem with this setup. When you reach a certain point in the level with this randomizer, you'll get a different result depending on how many times you clicked, regardless of where that click was. So it doesn't matter where I click in this example, but as long as I click twice, and as long as my seed is being checked in the same X position, I'll always get the same result. So how did I achieve the randomest random there is? Well, the answer is actually surprisingly simple. See what I did there? Every time you click, the seed will stop counting up and start counting the other way. To spice things up even more, the number decreases slightly slower than it increases. This setup works perfectly, and I honestly can't think of any ways to further improve it. But there's still one big unavoidable problem in our way. Technically, if a player were to unleash their inner tasks and recreate the exact same inputs at the exact same positions, they would get the same result every time. So we need to make sure it's as hard as possible for that to happen. The solution? Straight fly, obviously. The only reason the level starts with this consistent ship section is so the player can generate a completely unique seed that probably can't be recreated. So now that the chunks and randomizer have been explained, it's time for the final component, which is how the seed is used to generate a chunk. If you look at the level in the editor, you'll notice that these set of 8 triggers pop up over and over again, usually in between chunks. That's because another chunk, usually 2 or 3 ahead from your current one, is generated every time you pass one. The way it works is extremely straightforward. Each chunk has its 4 variants layered one on top of another. The first one's on group 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. All 4 of these are toggled off by the toggle triggers in the mechanism. After that, one of the 4 instant count triggers will activate depending on your current seed. If the seed is 0, the first variant will toggle back on. If the seed is 1, variant 2 activates. If it's 2, variant 3, and if it's 3, variant 4. Since the chunk is being generated well ahead of your current position, you don't notice anything at all. However, if you were to use a hack to resize your game's window or just had a really long monitor for some reason, the level would look like this. And that about sums up everything going on in this level. To recap, your inputs are used to generate a random number from 0 to 3, which is frequently checked to toggle on one of the 4 pre-made chunks. Just like most of my levels, this one is free to copy and attempts to explain everything that's going on right from the editor. Also, if you're interested in seeing a bit of the behind the scenes magic as you play the level, you can fly through this block at the start to enable developer mode. This will display the current seed above your icon and will pulse black every time a new chunk is generated. Additionally, you can also see the chunk borders. You'd be surprised how much I use these things when making the level. I know this kind of video is very different from my normal video style, but it's something that I've wanted to make for a long time now, so you can expect more technical videos like this in the future. If you found this interesting, then leave a like, or maybe even subscribe. I only upload like once or twice a month, so you don't have to worry about your sub box exploding. You're welcome. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.